Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Absolute Batman issue 9 by Scott Snyder, Nick Dragotta and Frank Martin. Bane finally makes his long-anticipated Absolute Universe debut this issue as we venture away from Gotham to Bialia, where the leaders of Kahndaq and Quarak are meeting to conduct peace talks between their nations. But their little meeting is put on indefinite hold as Bane shows up. Now I'm really liking all of the world building these first few pages do. We get mentions of Bialia, Kahndaq, Quarak and their place in the world. It's also fun seeing how different they are too, on the verge of peace, a good peace by the looks of it here with the two leaders, relating about all of the people who in their lives have died because of the wars between their countries, and they want to take a step away from that, only for Bane to come in and kind of ruin it. Bane's character is also properly revealed here. We've seen him in, preview art and everything and covers and everything, but we didn't really know what he was going to be like. And here it's properly revealed as he is a big lumbering dude, like he is a massive guy, but he's also very well spoken. He's softly spoken as well, and he's pushing someone's agenda as he's there to ensure that Kahndaq and Quarak don't get to have peace. And he actually turns the leaders on each other, killing one of them in the process. It also really is interesting that despite finding out that he's working for someone higher up, he's not just like a lone entity in this world, it doesn't turn him into the classic right-hand heavy, the thug that the main villain uses against the hero at all. And in fact, he still feels very much his own character. He's not subservient to others. He doesn't feel like he's just taking orders. He feels like he's his own thing here, which is really quite cool. Nick Dragotta, the artist of the book, also gives us a brilliant hint at what might be Bane's Venom form, I'm just going to call it that, which is this gross mass of tumorous muscles and veins, which is the big two-page splash that reveals the title of the story arc, which is Abomination. Kind of reminds me of Tetsuo from Akira when he hulks out and becomes that weird mass of flesh at the end of the film. I've said before, I'm someone who's a sucker for body horror in film, video games, and now comics, and this is just like right up my alley. I love the idea of turning Bane into this weird body horror freak show of just like muscle and tendon. It looks amazing. And it's just more visually interesting than just a tall, jacked guy that Bane usually is. So while Bane makes his way to Gotham, Batman is busy dispensing justice to the city's streets. It's been 2 weeks since his tussle with Mr. Freeze and 2 weeks since Waylon Jones went missing, and now Batman is on a one-man war to track down his friend. Missing from the last issue was Alfred's great journal entries, which has been across most of these issues, and is sort of detailing his adventures with Batman and what it's like seeing Bruce become the Batman. And here it's brought back by Snyder, and he has returned from London and he finds Bruce a man possessed. He's not stopping for anyone or anything until he finds his friend. The way Snyder sells Batman's war on crime is just really epic. It's just detailing all of these really neat things via Alfred's journal entries, like how Batman has beat so many people up in these last 2 weeks. The hospital actually ran out of ambulances to ferry people to the hospitals, and they had to turn to using Uber drivers to take patients to the hospitals with some EMTs, and they even ran out of them, resorting to things like using rickshaws. It's a great showcase of Batman's unshakable, unwavering drive. Like when he sets himself a target, he will not give up until that target is dealt with. There's also a bit more of a personal stake in this mission as well, because obviously Waylon was his best friend, and he's been taken, and he feels morally responsible for that because Waylon wanted to get involved in his activities as Batman and wanted to be part of his little team and actually help him. And Bruce feels like him doing that, or him allowing Waylon to do that, is what got him into this trouble in the first place. So he feels very responsible for what has happened to him. Now, during all of this, there is probably the biggest reveal so far of the issue, which is Dick Grayson exists in this world, and he's an EMT, helping some of the thugs Batman sent to the hospital out by getting them there in a rickshaw. It's a passing panel, but it's enough to set Dick up as someone who isn't really too happy about Batman hurting all of these people or putting him in a place where, he's got to commandeer a rickshaw to get people to the hospital. Another really interesting thing about this is that Dick appears to be a lot older than he usually is when he's introduced into the comics, because in the comics he's meant to become, Robin at the start. He's meant to be a child. Here he appears to be around the same age as Bruce, maybe just a little bit younger. So I'd like them to be able to, develop this relationship, because obviously Dick is going to, eventually get involved in this story more or less. I don't think he's going to become Nightwing or Robin. I think he might even stay as an EMT or like someone who helps Batman out but doesn't outrightly become a vigilante hero. And if he does though, there is a really interesting dynamic they can do with that, because obviously with the Batman-Robin dynamic, it's like the father-son duo, they have that dynamic with each other. But now that Dick appears to be a little older and more Bruce's age, you could develop that into more of a best friend angle, or like a mentor-mentee sort of thing without that father-son dynamic, which would be very interesting, because that's something I don't think we've ever seen with Dick and Bruce. It's always been that father-son angle. And to explore something different here is just so cool, and kind of speaks a lot of Scott Snyder's willingness to try something new and go down a different avenue, because you can, in this universe, you can do all of this new and cool stuff, because you're not bogged down with like decades of like how these characters should be and all of this history and everything. You can just try something new, which has been so refreshing about this new Absolute universe. Now, speaking of Bruce's friends and allies, Bruce ends up meeting with Barbara Gordon, contacting her through one of his old masks that she confiscated after she chased him down the sewers, and meets her at the Bat Signal in Gotham Zoo. I'm loving how Barbara Gordon is also being used as Batman's person in the police force. She's filling the role that her father would usually use. And again, like with Dick, she is more Bruce's age in this time round. So while that respect Batman usually has with Jim being, the older, more experienced cop, that he'd have respect for him and his role, while that is gone, it's actually replaced by a relatability between these two characters, because they're around the same age. They've kind of experienced similar things with each other, so that they have that connection like that, a connection that I don't think Jim and Bruce never really had on that type of level. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Barbara ends up making her way up to the commissioner role or something similar to that, since it seems like she is on that kind of trajectory. She's still with the cops. I imagine something will happen that will force her to take on a much larger role in the police force, which I guess Batman would want her to do, being that she is one of the few good cops, much like her father was. And she's also proving her worth to Batman as well, because Batman has asked her to find out what has happened to Waylon, what has become of his friend, and she learns that he was taken seemingly by the police, who took him to Arkham. Probably the one thing I found very compelling about this Batman is the family and friends aspect. He is surrounded by a support group of childhood friends, mentors like Alfred, and allies like Alfred, and actively involves them in his missions, much to his own chagrin, since he kind of has to now, since they kind of crowbarred their way in after learning that he was Batman. But I like that he begrudgingly accepted them and allowed them to help him out on these missions. And as I said in my previous reviews, I like we've moved past that moment all the Batman throughout history have gotten, where he learns that he can't do this mission alone. He can't, wage this never-ending war on crime alone. He needs people there to help him, and he needs to learn that it's okay to ask for help. And he's learned that here very early on, just 2 years into his career. So then we get sequences like this where Bruce meets with Edward, Harvey, Oswald, and Alfred to come up with a plan to spring Waylon out of Arkham. This is also used as an excuse to do a bit of a lore dump, an exposition dump here, as Harvey learns Waylon's gym was actually now considered eminent domain, which is something that surprisingly happened very quickly, which is kind of terrifying to think about. You get snatched up, no one knows where you're gone, then suddenly the government come in and just take all of your possessions and your property as theirs, and kind of erase you from the world. That's terrifying. Alfred also reiterates what the Arks are, which are black sites rumored to be housing horrifying experiments and prisoners. And Bruce knows that Freeze was using his snowfall to mark people in the city for the Arks for some reason. I love that it's all starting to come together. All these little plot points that we've been seeing over the last couple of issues are starting to connect up. We're starting to see the larger picture here, and I love how Scott hasn't just kind of barreled right into it. I could see this, all have been done by a lesser writer in 5 issues, but I like that Scott is taking his time here. We're about to hit issue 10, and we're starting to learn really just who like the big bad guy is, the Joker, and like all that sort of stuff. There's still so much mystery here, and the way it's been deployed has been thoroughly interesting because you get a lot told to you, but then not a lot revealed at the same time, and it leaves you wanting more and wants you to come back and learn more about the mystery. The team also dig up more on the arcs themselves, learning that they began hundreds of years ago when JK Industries bought an island that once housed a hospital of some type, and they began digging under the structure, seemingly building something big under the old hospital. Thanks to it being still under construction, Bruce has a way in via the exposed pipes and vents under the building. But Bruce's anger also rears its ugly head as Oswald wants them all to just get Wayland and leave town and disappear into witness protection, since Bruce's plans are getting crazier. This sets Bruce off as he tells them that this is what Batman is and they wanted to be part of it, so this is what they have to deal with. Surprisingly, Oswald is actually all for the plan, just wanted to say how crazy the plan was. It's a nice little vignette that shows us Bruce's anger kind of gets the better of him from time to time, even in little things like this where like he didn't kind of wait for Oswald to kind of like say that it was a joke, or he didn't pick up on like the social cue of that, you know, of the way Oswald would have said it in like a sarcastic tone. He didn't really pick up on that because this Bruce, while having friends, is still very like antisocial. While Bruce plans out his mission, Martha and Jim talk about Mayor Hill deciding to deploy a private police force into the city, which sparks an argument between the two about Jim not getting out there to actually help them. Jim knows that their race for mayor is over, or more specifically, his time is over, as he thinks Martha should actually run for mayor in his place. Now this feels like a dangling carrot, as there is a story in that, Martha Wayne running for mayor, and I can see where that would actually lead her, maybe putting her up against Bruce's Batman, because maybe she thinks vigilantes in the city aren't a good thing. I could see the story there forming, but I like that Scott takes a swerve here where he makes it known, like right here in the panel, that Martha will not be running for mayor. That's not what her story is going to be. It's going to be something else, and what that is, we don't know yet, and imagine we'll find out what that is in a couple of issues. The book takes a small break as well from all of these plots to head into the past with a flashback with Bruce and Selina, who are celebrating a job well done with a romp in a stack of cash. I've really liked how reserved Selina and Bruce have been, you know, the dynamic of their relationship has been revealed in this book, since we're not getting a whole lot of it. We're just getting little flashbacks here and there about how Selina was there for Bruce in certain parts of his time, and I don't think we've actually seen them interact in the present at all yet. It's been all past history stuff, so I'm looking forward to what Scott has in store for their relationship and their dynamic and what became of it, like what kind of drove these people apart. The romantic moment is interrupted by Wayland, who barges into the room to tell his friends that he got his big fight against Bibbo Babowski, and he's there because he wants Bruce to train him. The friend dynamic between Bruce and Wayland has been such a refreshing new thing for these characters, especially since Wayland and Batman, despite being hero and villain with, you know, Batman and fighting Killer Croc, you never really see them interact outside of those type of stories where, you know, Batman has to take down Killer Croc as like a first act villain, or, you know, he's being used as the heavy for another villain. So I like that they're focusing on the relationship between these two characters who we seldom see together. And it's refreshing and new ground, and I just love it so much. Back in the present, Batman infiltrates Arkham, guided by Alfred, who directs him where to go until Batman finds the real Arkham under the hospital, which is a giant, huge underground facility. The scale of this place is just immense, like it's impossibly huge, and Nick Dragotta captures this scale perfectly with a cool full-page spread. Amazing art aside, Alfred's narration ramps up here as Bruce leaps into the facility and loses communications with him, which racks him with guilt since he, up until Bruce left for the mission, was trying to tell Bruce what he found in London, which was everything happening in Gotham is connected to something far bigger and much more dangerous than Bruce could ever conceive. On top of that, we learn some really small, absolutely important bits of info that will become pertinent a little later on, like Alfred revealing that Slade Wilson is working for the Joker, hinting at Slade being his former partner or brother-in-arms at the SIS, who has turned evil. Now this is such a neat idea, pairing Alfred and Slade together and building this spy mercenary story around them. I also like the idea of Slade maybe being more of an Alfred villain than a Batman one. Like obviously he's going to fight Batman, Deathstroke is going to fight Batman. Everyone loves that image of, Deathstroke fighting Batman, even though Deathstroke is not a Batman villain. But I like that Alfred has much more of a stake in having to fight him and going against him than Batman does, and it gives him a little bit more to do in the storyline beyond be the man in the chair for Batman. On top of that, Alfred also found out more about Joker, finding him to be the one behind it all, and he might be as ancient as the stone itself. I really love how they've described Joker, how we haven't really even seen him. He's kind of this guy in the shadows. I like what Alfred says here, he's ancient as the stone itself, but as fresh as baby's blood. Just such a hardcore description of this guy that we haven't even seen fully yet. We've seen just little vignettes of him stealing the life from weird little fetus baby things, and just him in the background laughing at stuff, but just building up this character as this be all end all to what's going on, and what his plans for Gotham are and the world are still shrouded in mystery. And Scott just knows how to build this mystery and get me hooked, and he has me hooked line and sinker. Alfred also doesn't want Bruce to repeat his mistakes, hence why he's racked with guilt for hesitating to tell Bruce all of this. He wants Bruce to succeed and know what he's really up against, something he himself never got. Batman meanwhile finds the skeleton of Man-Bat, trying to contact Alfred and figure out what's going on as Bane suddenly appears, prompting a very violent fight between Batman and Bane, who again is so calm and collected, and even just allows Batman to attack him. He welcomes him to try and attack him, and Bane employs some really cool martial arts stuff here as he barely touches Bruce's arm. He just touches it with 2 fingers, and that causes it to go dead and limp on Bruce's shoulder, basically paralyzing his nerves. He does this to both of Bruce's arms, leaving him with only his legs to fight back with, but he keeps on attacking, thinking Bane's green juice cocktail pumping through him isn't going to save him from him kicking his ass. However, Bane reveals he actually hasn't used any of the Venom cocktail yet, deciding to show Batman what it's like when he actually does use it, and he activates the Venom, and it causes him to transform into this giant, grotesque, muscle-bound monster who grabs Bruce and introduces himself to Batman fully as he prepares him for surgery in Arkham's labs. Bane's entire reveal across this issue was just fantastically handled, and the taste of the way he fights here we get is just so cool. It's an extension of that calm and collected attitude we saw at the beginning of the issue, and it's cool seeing this, hulking mass of a guy employ stuff like nerve pinches and very subtle fighting techniques instead of just, running through walls and smashing stuff. And I imagine we're going to get some of that stuff a little later on in the book once Batman ups the ante and ends up fighting him for real. But maybe the Venom makes him do that and makes him a bit more of a mindless monster. But I like the idea of Batman just going up against him as just kind of a stock standard, slightly bigger than normal guy, and he's just completely outclassed at all. He's outgunned in every way, hilariously outgunned, as Alfred has been putting it, and it's what makes him so compelling. Batman's got to be resourceful here, and he can't just take the problems head on because he doesn't have the gadgets or the fancy tools or anything. It's just him and his know-how of how to make things out of Home Depot, wood and nails and stuff, and I can't wait to see how he employs that resourcefulness in taking down Arkham and Bane. Absolute Batman issue 9 wonderfully introduced us to this universe's Bane, perfectly laying down his character, his role in the larger story, and why he's such a big threat to Batman and to Gotham. Outside of that, I loved Scott doubling down on all the family drama Batman is dealing with his friends wanting to help him out and be part of who Batman is. Getting a Batman who has this close-knit support system so early on in his career is just loads of fun, as is making most of these characters mostly Bruce's age as well, kind of leveling that playing field a little bit where there's a relatability between all of these characters, and it totally shifts the dynamic between characters like Barb, and I imagine what we'll see with Dick Grayson a little later on down the line. I cannot wait to explore more of Arkham next issue and learn more about Bane and what has turned this guy into this giant homunculus tumor monster we glimpsed at this issue. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.